Welcome to day one of hopefully 21 or less days of this lockdown here in the Bay Area. And as I said yesterday, when I mean the Bay Area is under a lockdown, they don't really mean that it is an actual lockdown and that it's a lockdown where you just cannot go out of your house. I mean, basically, the local city government are saying that you can still go outside to do some of your essential needs, like going to the grocery. And as of now, I even seen somebody outside just walking their dog casually. And basically, you can still go out and walk or even hike around the trail as long as you are either doing it alone or you're not doing it with a bunch of people and you're not just going to like going with a group. That is a big no-no, and that is something that you could be fined for not following the law of the local city government basically enforcing in terms of this lockdown. But the bottom line is, it's not a full lockdown, and for me, I'm going to try to stay at home as much as possible, and that the only time I want to go out is if I'm gonna go out to get some snacks from the local store, or maybe, and this is a big maybe, I might just kind of walk around the neighborhood just to kind of take a walk because getting stuck at home for 21 days straight, it can be a little bit frustrating, and that at times it can get really old soon, even if I'm just there doing these videos for you guys and also watching some of my favorite documentary that I tend to watch when I'm not busy. But yeah, the first video that we will talk about, and most of these videos I'm going to be talking about until the MLS season is going to resume, is kind of like a recap of what has happened either in the league or some of the most famous match that has happened. And I will even do a recap of some of the episode that I've done in the Sports Hop series that is considered one of the most famous and one of the most favorite Sports Hop series episode I've done. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the San Jose Earthquakes and recapping in terms of this winless run, because it's hard to believe, but the Quakes have not won a single game since the end of August, and that I think we are now approaching 7 or 8 months that the Quakes have not got a win, and that stretch could continue as long as if we're going to be in a situation where the league is suspended, or if the league decided that they're not going to start the season until July. We could possibly be getting to a point where I could go an entire calendar year without seeing the Quakes get a victory, which I think that should probably be a record in terms of a team to go an entire calendar year without having a win. Although, partially this is mainly because the Quakes unfortunately have to endure this coronavirus outbreak like many other teams, and that the league is suspended, and that during most of the stretch they are either not playing their games or they're just currently in this outbreak where the league is being suspended because of that. But if you even going back to last year in terms of this winless run, the total games that the Quakes have not got a win is now at 8 games, which I believe last year there was a couple of stretch, or not last year, but back in 2018 there was a couple of stretch where we actually went even longer than 8 games without winning a single one. I think back in 2018, I remember there was a stretch where we went 12 games without winning, and that we actually went about 4 months into the season, and that's not even include the off season, where we did not win a single game. So this is not as bad as what we endured in 2018, but it could get very bad if this team are not able to finally get their first victory since last August, and that the memories of 2018 is going to be coming back into this 2020 season. But going back to the game that all started this winless run for the Quakes, the game was against RSL, where the Quakes lost 1-0 against RSL. And you notice most of these games are relatively low score, and that the Quakes, except for this one against Minnesota, they just didn't really get blowout by any of these games. And even in some of these games where it's like 3-1, where maybe you can kind of consider that a blowout, they were at least being competitive in those games, and that they weren't really getting blown out whatsoever. And in some ways, they kind of got a little bit unlucky in some of these games, whether it's last minute winner that broke the spirit of the team and weren't able to get a point out of the game, or the fact that they got screwed by the referee, which it was a very common theme last year, especially at the end of the season. But the first game that started this winless run was against RSL, which the only goals in this game was scored by Damar Krylak in the 75th minute, as the Quakes lost 1-0 in that game. And that game was not a fun game to watch as a Quakes fan, or even as a neutral fan too. I mean, if you're a neutral fan, just watch how that game went, where neither of these teams seems to really like to attack, and neither of these teams really want to get all 3 points in that game. That you just feel like it's just going to take one moment for a team to score, and that will be that. And when Krylak scored that goal for RSL to give RSL a 1-0 lead, I knew that was probably the winning goal, because both of these teams weren't really doing anything, and that the Quakes, judging by how last year went and how they rarely come from behind to maybe get a point out of the game, I thought that for sure we weren't going to get anything out of it, which that's exactly what we did. Now, in the next game where we play against NYCFC, and keep in mind, the other thing that I complained about the stretch last year where we lost 6 in a row to end the season was not just because we're playing some of the toughest opponent, and that all these opponents actually made it to the playoffs, the last six opponent that we were facing, but there was stretch where we have to go on a short week and we have to travel all the way across the other side of the country on a short rest, and this was the case when we have to go to NYCFC on a short rest. I believe this game was actually kicked off at 12:30 p.m. Eastern and 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and this game between RSL versus the Quakes ended at around I think it was, what was it? I think it was like 11:30 Eastern time and 9:30 local time and 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. So the Quakes virtually had less than 72 hours to prepare for this game, and that we knew this was always going to be tough for the Quakes to get out of anything against NYCFC. But to be fair, they did try in the beginning, and it looked like they were maybe gonna be in for a surprising upset when Wando, of course, scored the opening goal. And scoring the opening goal, or scoring a goal in the first half to kind of make things a little bit interesting, is going to be a common theme for the Quakes when I talk about their last 6 games and their first 6 games that started this 8-game winless run. But in this game, as I said, Wando, of course, scored the opening goal. We thought maybe this would be a very surprising win against NYCFC. But then Keaton Park scores to tie the game up, and then it seemed like the team just kind of had that lapse of concentration between those period of spell where they just completely switched off, and NYCFC in quick succession was able to score 2 goals. The next goal, of course, came from Matrita in the 43rd minute, and that was the final score of this game as the Quakes lose 2-1 against NYCFC, even though they did look pretty competitive in that game, and that I didn't feel like they were that tired coming out of this game until the second half, where it's shown that when you go to the other side of the country on less than a 72-hour rest, yeah, that's when you're going to be tired out by the factor of that game. But then the next game, we play against another Eastern Conference team, which is Atlanta United, and we lost 3-1 in this game. But if you actually watch this game, this one, you wouldn't think that Atlanta really just completely rip apart the Quakes. Well, in some way they kind of did, but the Quakes were holding their own in this game. And, you know, early on it looked like it was probably going to be a blowout when Justin Merrim scored that goal. But then Guzan, of course, scored an own goal, which, from what I remember, it was Espinoza that was trying to cross into the box, and somehow, in some way, Guzan wasn't able to deal with it cleanly, and then it just basically went into the back of the net. And the game, of course, was tied up at 1 apiece, but then Espinoza, of course, got sent off in the 34th minute. Wando, of course, would later be sent off, but that would be right after right after when Atlanta scored that 3rd goal, so that wasn't really a factor. But what was a factor was when Espinoza got sent off, and that not only we lost our best player in this game and also the next game against Philadelphia, but we're going to have to play 10 man for at least 60 minutes against virtually one of the best team in the league and probably one of the best team at home. So that was a really tough task, and we basically kind of got lucky a couple of times because Atlanta, their finishing was not very good, but we really held our own, and I thought our spirit and just the fight and the tenacity of this team was going to give us a hard-earned point. But no, instead the MLS gods were being very harsh to us, and they've been kind of harsh for us throughout the end of the stretch because Emerson Hyman was scoring the 90th minute, and then Pity Martinez basically finished the game off with another goal in the 92nd minute, and that's why the game ended 3-1. And that, as I said, if you didn't watch the game, it wasn't like Atlanta just stroll over the Quakes. The Quakes really held their own in that game, but they were very unfortunate to not able to come out of anything, and they got beaten in the last minute of this game. Now, when the Quakes returned home against the Union, obviously this game was going to be a tough game no matter what, even when we didn't have Wando and Espinoza, because Philly was a team that were fighting to get the top couple of spots in the Eastern Conference. But I also thought that this was a must-win for the Quakes because, it was a rough road trip for the Quakes, getting nothing out of those 3-game road trip. Now they, of course, return home, which they've been so good last season. You would think maybe this will spark them and maybe get a crucial wins down the stretch. But no, instead, that wasn't going to be the case. And again, the Quakes, they took a quick 1-0 lead in the first half with Jackson Yu scoring the 35th minute, and you think maybe this could be a good night for the Quakes and that they can get all 3 points. But no, instead, a lapse of concentration, just like the game against NYCFC where we conceded 2 goals in quick succession. This time we conceded in the 70th minute. It was Bedoya that scored the equalizer, and then Shabilko basically scored the winner in the 76th minute, and the Quakes lost 2-1 in that game. And that was also the game where it is also known as kind of the bottle gate game of the season, because I remember this was also the game where I think in the 83rd minute we won a penalty, but then the referee overrules that via VAR, and just hundreds of bottles was raining down from the stands, and everybody, it was basically something you would see LAFC fans or Orlando City fans do whenever they have a call go against them. And yeah, it was just, not only it was a surreal experience, but I was very ashamed of what our fan base did. I mean, I knew that coming into that game, and really just coming into that decision, there's been a boiling point that the Quakes fan base had with these referees and how we've been screwed by the referee for most of these games. But I never thought that boiling point would reach where not only it would be blow up, but fans are just going to throw trash onto the pitch. And to this day, I'm kind of still surprised the fact that it didn't really reach the media a lot, and that I thought the very next day I was going to hear a lot of news about this whole throwing trash and throwing ball onto the field, and a lot of these fan base are gonna say that we're basically just as savage as what LAFC and Orlando City fans are. But no, that was not really mentioned in the news. And I guess maybe the reason why it wasn't mentioned in the news was after the game, the Quakes actually denied a lot of the media to actually speak after the game, which that maybe makes the reason why there was not really a lot of media that really kind of get a closer look of why exactly the Quakes fans did that. Although you could also make an argument that if you decided to restrict media after just an embarrassing display that your own fan base does, doesn't that actually make you more suspicious? I mean, I don't know. It was, again, I was very surprised the fact that it wasn't a news that really reached to the MLS world, where people were talking about how the fact that Quakes fans was just an should be absolutely embarrassed of themselves of deciding to throw garbage onto the field, even though we have been screwed by the referee for the past couple of games. Now, the very next game, we of course lost to Seattle 1-0, and guess what? We lost to Seattle at the last minute. Jordan Morris, of course, scored the goal in the 94th minute to add in another chapter of pain and suffering that the Quakes have suffered down the stretch. Tommy Thompson and Arriaga both got sent off in that game, and as much as after Tommy Thompson, of course, got sent off in that, I was hoping we were gonna get a point out of it because we were down to 10 men for the remaining game. As soon as when Arriaga got sent off, I thought we were probably going to maybe get all 3 points in this game. But no, instead, we didn't. We, of course, gave up all 3 points at the last minute. And as I said, that's just another chapter of just the pain and suffering the Quakes had to deal with down the stretch. And then, obviously, on the very last day, this game against the Timbers, which was pretty much an all or nothing game where if you win this game, you're basically in the playoffs. If you lose, you're going to be out of the playoffs. And the Quakes, of course, lost this game against the Timbers. Mabiella, of course, scored the opening goal, but Wando, of course, tied the game up at 1 apiece, and that continued the theme that, after the first half is over, you were kind of having a little bit of hope, the fact that the Quakes can at least get something out of it. But no, instead, Spurrier scores in the 59th minute, and Sebastian Blanco basically finished off the game in the 75th minute, and the Quakes, of course, missed out on the playoffs because they lost 6 in a row. And that when you look at all these games, there could been a lot of situation where you could really say, what if the Quakes actually did something different? Like, you could literally say, what if the Quakes didn't get that lapse of concentration against NYCFC and concede 2 goals in a short spell? What if the Quakes were able to hang on to a 1-1 draw against Atlanta? What if they of course were able to hang on to a 1-0 lead? And if that penalty was given and the Quakes were able to tie the game up against the Union, they would have got a point out of that game, even if they were down 2-1 up to that point. And then, of course, the Seattle game, what if Jordan Morris didn't score that late winner and that we get a point out of it? And then, of course, all those what-ifs factor and all those points that was dropped during this 5-game losing streak heading into the final game of the season. That final game of the season, even though a lot of people will remember that as the game where it's all for the marbles and it's all or nothing for both of these teams to see if they can make the playoffs, it didn't have to be. If all those what-if factors and all those possible scenarios that went against the Quakes didn't happen heading into that final game. But we can't really do anything about that, and it was kind of disappointing, the fact that the Quakes, of course, choked their way near the end of the season and just completely collapsed to miss the playoffs at the end of the season. Now, heading into the 2020 season, the winless run, of course, continue, but they did end the losing streak on the first game of the season when they drew 2-2 against TFC. Pozuelo and Larrea scores the first 2 goals. Rios quickly got one back for the Quakes after Richie Larrea made it 2-0 for TFC. And then Alines, who was making his debut for the Quakes, pretty much did a Hollywood script kind of ending where he was able to score from a free kick and from a angle that was just impossible to actually score a free kick to tie the game up at 2 apiece. And that, in many ways, this game is kind of a game where I really wish that of what happened last season and most of the things that kind of gone against us should have been like what we saw in the first game of the season, where for once things didn't actually gone against us and that we didn't really receive a lot of bad luck. But at the same time, we kind of also got away with losing this game, and that this could have easily been 7 in a row with the way how bad the Quakes play against TFC in that first game. And then we also know what happened the last game, which is to this day on the last game that the Quakes play until the season resumed, where they lost 5-2 against Minnesota. Opara, of course, scoring the first goal. He would score a game and in the 71st minute. Eriksson did get one back for the Quakes to tie the game up at 1 apiece, but Jan Gregorish and Almeria and Robin Lille would make it 4-1 at halftime, which I don't think I actually remember a time when the Quakes are actually down 4-1 at halftime. Like, even when the Quakes lost 5-0 to LAFC last season, they were not 4-1 down at halftime during that point. So that was just an absolute humiliation. Vaco did try to bring one back and maybe start a possible comeback for the Quakes. But as I said, Opara, who scored earlier in the 12th minute, was able to score a game in the 71st minute to pretty much shut the door close. And yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much the winless run that the Quakes are enduring. And I won't be surprised when you look at these next couple of games, where I know the Quakes are going to be playing the Union next, and that's if they're going to be playing against the Union. Like, we don't know if when MLS does come back, whether it's in April or May or whenever they decided to play after all this virus kind of outbreak that's going on is going to calm down a little bit. But when they do come back, we don't know exactly, are we just going to be like at match week number 3, or the fact that we're just going to play the opponent that we're facing when we come back, and that we're going to have like a shortened season because of that. But either way, whatever it is, I won't be surprised if the losing streak will continue, and that, you know, I really hope that during this break, and I know the teams aren't able to do training, and that Almeida hasn't been able to kind of drill in this team with the way that they performed in the first 2 seasons, because each of these teams are not allowed to have training session during this coronavirus outbreak situation. But still, I really hope that when they do come back, this team would look at least monumentally better than what I saw in the first 2 games, and really what I saw from the last 6 games of last season. Because what I saw in the first 2 games really reminds me of 2018. And if this is going to be 2018 again, somebody's going to have to be fired. And I really hope that Almeida won't be the guy, because I've been always saying in Almeida we trust, because his system will work out. But, you know, if he isn't able to deliver result, you know, we pretty much have no choice but potentially have to fire him. But we also have to look at the top. Jesse Forinelli, I think his time could be up with the way that, you know, this is his 4th season with the team, and the fact that he's been keep promising and just kind of keep apologizing to the fans that he got it wrong. Well, you know, it's good the fact that he admits that he got this team wrong and that he didn't really correctly provide support for Almeida. But it just gets to a point where you can apologize all you want, but if you make the same mistake, it doesn't matter how many times you get up you apologizing. I mean, it's basically like the old saying where, you know, if you make a mistake once, you apologize. We always want you to basically say that, you know, I'm sorry that we made this mistake, and I hope that it won't happen again. But if you make the same mistake again, then you are expected to get some more harsher disciplinary reason, or that you potentially get let go. That is going to be the case with Jesse Forinelli, and that I really think if he cannot bring this team to be a team that is going to be competing for the playoffs, he's going to have to go, along with so many other these high executive and this front office staff that the Quakes had, because it's just not working with the way that this team has, and that we cannot see this team just go years and years of mediocrity because of the way of the structure and the philosophy and the culture of this team is going to. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video, and when do you think the Quakes are going to finally end this winless run. And also, let me know in the comments below what you've been doing during this outbreak and during this lockdown that is happening right now. But yeah, either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.